Ode Tempest is a pact of extremes. A walking fortress that turns your team into an unstoppable wall of destruction. It makes your party unkillable, your damage absurd, and your ego reach well past its power cap. Sure, bosses take a bit longer, but let's take a closer look at why this pact can feel so broken. Astra Sphere is one of Ode Tempest's defining powers, and easily one of the most absurdly strong effects in the entire game. It creates a large hemispherical zone that lasts for about 15 seconds. The debuff it applies lingers even longer, just long enough for the ability to fully do its job. The sphere's duration doesn't scale with Spirit, though the debuff's timer extends slightly with it, not by much. The radius can also be increased by grace, by almost a meter at full investment, so yeah. The real insanity comes from what happens inside. Anything within that dome that isn't a boss takes quadruple damage from every possible source: weapons, abilities, smites, even attacks from your teammates. On top of that, enemies take small bursts of damage the first time they make contact with the sphere. Bosses, however, are completely unaffected. They ignore it entirely. Everything else dies the second you give it a mean look. And then comes the kicker. The red totem synergy. The red totem adds a percentage of your melee damage as area damage to your attacks. And since that AoE damage counts as a separate source, the multiplier applies twice. First, it quadruples the base damage hit used to calculate the AoE, and then it quadruples the AoE itself. The result? You've basically strapped a small nuclear device upon your weapon, minus the friendly fire. Most enemy groups are simply gone after 2 heavy strikes. That's it, you win. You broke the game. Congratulations. Imagine if every enemy spawned with only a quarter of their normal health, and every swing you made detonated across the battlefield. That's the Astra Sphere plus Red Totem in a nutshell. The only time it stops feeling godlike is when you meet a boss. Because, well, it does absolutely nothing to them. But don't worry, Ode Tempest has an answer for that too. May I present to you? This is Atmos Sphere. This ability summons a little floating body ball, a glowing orb that hovers at your side. It lasts for up to around 40 seconds, less if not investing into Spirit. And because you're such a generous soul, it also summons one for every nearby ally. Each orb absorbs 11 to 13 instances of incoming damage, depending on your courage. It doesn't care whether it's a sword swing or a damage tick from a puddle of fire, every hit counts as a charge. While active, it essentially grants you stagger immunity. Only the most violent impacts, say a Nimrod dropping from orbit, can knock you over. Everything else just bounces off. In practice, that means heavy melee wind-ups, irrelevant. Sniping with a bow, take your time. Parrying or evading enemy blows? Why care? Only a handful of damage sources can chew through this barrier quickly. The burning ground patches from certain bannerets are one of the few exceptions. Each blocked hit also triggers a minor shockwave that fills enemy stagger bars and occasionally drops them to the floor for a free finisher. But that's just the warm-up. When you stand inside your Astra Sphere while the shield is active, both effects link together. Every attack that hits you triggers a retaliatory shockwave inside the dome, spreading the damage that was aimed at you to everything within. In short, enemies start doing your job for you. This tool doesn't only make you or your team literally ignore every form of danger, but it also lasts long enough to kill any current boss in the game before its effect wears off, even when attacks consists only of normal attack spam. Naturally, there are limits. Your boss kill speed becomes that of a normal envoy who simply refuses to die, and the cooldown is long enough that you will notice the downtime. So, not complete immortality, just almost. It can be quite an irritating feeling when you first walk through minions like a god between mortals and then hit a boss and it feels like a slow crawl. Not because you are weaker, just because you are used to everything exploding the moment you glare at it. Anyway, that's 2 abilities down, 1 more to go. Seismor is your third active, a rolling boulder of rock and flame that travels forward until it hits something or times out. Its range scales with Spirit, its damage scales with courage. Enemies close to the path get dragged along until it ends or slams into a wall, where it pops for area damage. It ignores some barriers, making it keep rolling while dragged enemies stay behind. Each hit it causes ramps its damage slightly, also scaling with courage. So the longer it rolls, the harder it hits. hits. Neat on paper. It also seems to ignore armor, making it damage stable even against higher level enemies. The damage itself, despite that, isn't breathtaking without Astra Sphere at that level scale. Against bosses though, Seismor fizzles. It produces one low damage hit exploding directly, weaker than a heavy swing. Astra Sphere boosts its damage, and due to its lingering debuff, it also applies when enemies are dragged outside the sphere. On weaker pacts, this could be a somewhat handy damaging and grouping tool on a short cooldown. Not really that powerful, but better than nothing. On Ode Tempest, where heavy attacks already erase the room, it's completely redundant. So unless your other abilities are on cooldown or you enjoy medieval bowling, don't bother. Passives. Good news first. Both actually function. Yes, really. Gravitate lets you dash to your current lock-on target when using kick. Short dash, infinite uses, works fine. Lightning strike sends a tiny shock through nearby enemies when you perform a ground finisher. Also fine. Usefulness is another topic. Gravitate suffers from encounter design. There aren't many threats that demand a quick disengage and re-engage. Most enemies sprint into your arms anyway, trying to give you a hug. No PvP either, so no mobile archers blitzing away for you to chase. There are a few backpedaling mages, sure, but outside the 1 point you are investing into reach a kin anyway, it's hard to justify. Lightning strikes fares worse. It deals around 60 damage at max rank in a small radius, and that gets reduced by armors to single-digit numbers even on mid-level enemies. Technically working, but functionally non-existent. And now that we have covered that, let's move on to how to build our demigod. Virtues first. You will want some spirit for Atmos Sphere's duration and some courage to increase the shield's number of charges. For weapons, you're actually quite flexible. Almost anything gets boosted to absurd levels. What I found worked particularly well was just heavy attack spamming with Marrowbane. Its heavy attacks come out very quickly. Even compared to Gathanon's higher damage per strike, the higher DPS of Marrowbane wins as long as the armor won't get another spike, like when we got into Preludes 11. With your Atmos Sphere's shield up, you can just spam heavy attacks without any concern. No dodging, no interruptions. This playstyle, combined with the red totem equipped, will wipe out entire groups of trash mobs in a couple of hits, depending on how spread out they are, and even burst down bosses faster than your shield expires. Simple, efficient, top tier. And by the way, 27 courage is all you need to reach Marrowbane's attunement cap. This will already give 13 atmosphere charges. The rest can go into spirit. There's also an alternative playstyle, using the Earthroot staff. Less efficient, but it synergizes well with Ode Tempest kit. Magic weapons struggle against high armor, but they can equip Feybolt joineries for consecutive attack damage, letting them ramp up power with every hit until the chain breaks from rolling, casting or other actions. With their high attack speed while standing still, and Atmos Sphere keeping you safe, you can quickly stack damage without interrupting for trivial things like dodging. The issue is consistency. Even at full ramp up, the damage still doesn't outperform melee heavy attack spam, and enemies start perma-blocking after a few hits. Once that happens, you are forced to break their guard with a heavy attack to keep firing, only for them to block again seconds later. And that kills the pacing. So while the turret style gameplay feels amazing and fits Ode Tempest thematically, the blocking behavior ruins its flow. Fun to try, but not remotely on the same power level as Marrowbane. Aside from that, you know the drill from my other guides. The passives are useless, so grab the usual suspects, Sympathy, Akin, Everbound, and drop the remaining points into Spirit and Courage as needed. The playstyle is breathtakingly simple. Activate Atmos Sphere, then drop Astra Sphere on top of an enemy cluster. Use heavy attacks at the crowded center, fight is over. For bosses, it's even simpler. Use Atmos Sphere, spam heavy attacks until it's dead. That's literally it. Ode Tempest stands at the absolute peak when it comes to buffing your team and making them nearly unkillable, and that's only half the story. Right now, the Pact's limits, the finite shield hits, boss immunity, long cooldowns, barely matter, because nothing in the current game pushes it hard enough to expose them. There are no rapid fire enemies shredding your barriers, no surprise sub-bosses, and no relentless respawning hordes forcing you to play around your long barrier cooldown. So for the time being, you are really a god among mortals. Enjoy it while it lasts. That wraps up the Ode Tempest guide. If it helped you out, leave a like, share your own findings in the comments, and subscribe so you don't miss the next Pact Spotlight or Buildcrafting deep dive. Until next time, stay safe, envoys.